So let's get into it. So right now it's question 3 over 20, 17 left. So we have solve x plus 2 squared minus 72 is equal to 0. That's pretty much like this in principle that we're going to apply as the previous one. But the thing is, right now we're going to isolate some terms in order to make our life easier so that we can kind of like see what we are doing before we spread the whole thing out. So we're going to first of all start by isolating the square. We're going to say only half one. So it's going to be the first term, x plus 2 squared, and the 72 was the 72 was from the left and is going to the right, so therefore the sign will flip, the sign will change to a positive sign. It's not because it's going to the right, but like each time you're changing the number, like for the position of the numbers, so we need to also change the sign or maybe flip the sign accordingly. So it was a negative 72, it will be a positive 72. And if it was, for example, a negative 4, and if we did switch it to the left, it would have been a positive 4 just because we switch the side where the number was odd. So let me take that out because that was the exercise. So right now, by isolating the term, so we end up having x plus 2 squared is equal to 72. So right now we're gonna square the whole thing out. So we're gonna try to find not square, we're gonna get the we're gonna get the square root of both terms. So the first term will be square root of x plus 2 squared is equal to square root of 72. So the square root of x plus 2 squared will be equal to x plus 2, because the same thing again, y is equal to x plus 2 is just because there is a 2 over there as the index, but you don't see it because the square root, so you don't have to, and they will get cancelled out. So that's why you end up with the x plus 2. And then equal to 72. 72 is a little bit special because it's not one of those numbers called like prime numbers. Is it prime numbers? Prime numbers. No, it's not a number that will give you like a perfect square, not prime numbers. The name is perfect square. So it's not a number that will give you a perfect square if you, for example, take a calculator and try to put square root of 72. It's gonna actually give you 8.48. So we do know that we don't need any decimal numbers, so we don't want that. We can go with that. So we're gonna try to simplify the radical as much as possible in order to get our final answer. And the way that we're gonna do that is by finding a perfect square and a random number. So it doesn't need to be two perfect square. So you just need to get perfect square and you multiply it by a random number in order to actually simplify the perfect square and get a simplified version of the radical that you have right now. So for 36, we do know 36 by 2 is equal to 72. So 36 is the perfect square number, so we're going to use 36. X plus 2 again is equal to square root of 36 and square root of 2. So by doing so, like they have the same exponent, we can pretty much like multiply the 36 by the 2, it will still give you square root of 72. So in the column, so right now we're gonna write our roots. It's gonna be equal to 6 plus or minus 6 square root of 2. It's not the end yet because we still have a positive 2 on the left that we're going to switch it to the right so that we can get the x term that we're looking for. So it's going to be equal to x negative 2 because it's just changing the side, or you switching it from one term or one side to the other, so you need to change the sign as well. Plus or minus 6 square root of 2. So this is gonna be your final answer. But for some reason, decides, and maybe some features actually tell you to write it in a solution set. So how are you gonna do that? When you do have the plus or minus, keep in mind that it's two different numbers, so it's two solutions. So some teachers will let you actually write it this way: brackets, -2, plus or minus 6 in square root of 2. Or other teacher will prefer to you to write it this way. But it's still the same thing though. It's still the same thing. Just a matter of notation. Jesus Christ, I'm not gonna get that thing right. Just a matter of notation, but it's still the same thing. So -2 plus, we're gonna start by negative. We're gonna take this one, -6/2, and a comma, -2, +6/2. Those are two different numbers, and if you do try to put in your calculator and try to get the number, you will find a decimal number, of course. But yeah, so they're still both writing because they are a solution of the problem that you are solving. So there it is. So you have two notations. So you can either use the plus or minus and put the radical and maybe any numbers that you have in the solution, or you write them, each of them separately. That depends on the kind of solution. That not the kind of solution. That depends on the way that your teacher wants you to write it. But keep in mind that it's two different things. So if they don't tell you anything about the way that you need to write it, so you can either choose notation A. I would call that notation A, and notation B. So there we have it. So that was number 2/20. So let's go for number 4.